Tonight, unemployment drops unexpectedly. A hopeful sign, but the president warns there's still a long road to recovery.
Good trends don't pay the rent.
I'm Katie Couric. Also tonight, late word from Italy, a verdict in the Amanda Knox trial. The American exchange student is accused in the brutal murder of her roommate. And she has a fortune thanks to her famous brother, but she plans to give away every cent.
Some people think I'm doing it for brownie points, to get into heaven.
Tonight's American Spirit.
This is the CBS Evening News with Katie Couric.
Good evening, everyone. There's some unexpected good news about the economy tonight, and we'll get to that in a moment. First, though, there's breaking news out of Perugia, Italy. Tonight, jurors delivered a guilty verdict against Amanda Knox. She's the 22-year-old exchange student from Seattle charged with her roommate's gruesome murder. Her former boyfriend was also found guilty. Alan Pizzi is at the courthouse tonight. Alan, was this verdict a surprise?
In some ways it was, Katie. A lot of people thought that the defense had established reasonable doubt. The jury of 3 men, 3 women, and 2 judges obviously thought otherwise after almost 12 hours of deliberation. They sentenced Amanda Knox to 26 years in jail. And as she was escorted out of the courtroom, she was obviously upset. In fact, she was distraught. Her co-accused and former boyfriend, Raffaele Sollecito, was sentenced to 25 years in jail. The prosecution painted Knox as a promiscuous, manipulative liar with low personal hygiene standards, which led to animosity between her and British student Meredith Kircher, with whom she shared a cottage, and culminated in Miss Kircher being stabbed and slashed to death after being forced into a drug-fueled sex game.
Io non sono calma.
In her final plea to the court, Knox said in fluent Italian that she was afraid of losing myself, scared of being branded what I am not, scared of having the mask of an assassin forced onto me. Defense lawyers made much of the fact that there was little forensic evidence linking Knox and her co-defendant and former boyfriend Raffaele Sollecito to the crime, and insisted the police mishandled and contaminated what was picked up. It was a point her parents repeated in numerous interviews.
They have no evidence. They have no motive. They have no murder weapon. They have no evidence of Amanda at the crime scene. There is nothing that ties her to that crime.
But blood and DNA from a small-time drug dealer named Rudy Guede were all over the murder scene. He was convicted in a separate trial and sentenced to 30 years. Guede claimed to have seen Knox at the scene. Knox was not initially a suspect and went to the police voluntarily after the murder was discovered. She claims police began mistreating her from the start, and she did not have a lawyer while being questioned.
I was very, very scared.
Avevo tanta paura.
Because they were treating me so badly, I didn't understand why.
Knox's family said they were upset and disappointed at the verdict. There is, however, an automatic appeal, so Knox will get an automatic appeal, but that could take a couple of years, Katie.
All right, Alan Pizzi in Perugia, Italy tonight. Thank you, Alan. And this programming note, tomorrow night, 48 Hours Mystery presents a special report on the Amanda Knox verdict, American Girl, Italian Murder at 10/9 Central. Now to the economy. As we mentioned, there's some good news for a change. The jobless rate dipped slightly last month to 10%. And after many months where job cuts topped 100,000, in November, just 11,000 jobs disappeared, a fraction of what many experts had predicted. Anthony Mason is our business correspondent. And Anthony, it is really nice to see you tonight.
Yeah, Katie, this was a surprise and a good one. The best report card on jobs we've had since the recession began 2 years ago. And economists say a turnaround in the job market may at last be in sight. Employers all but stopped laying off workers in November.
I don't think it's a fluke. I think we'll see job growth flatten out now and probably start to rise in the first part of next year.
But with more than 7 million jobs lost since the recession began, the damage is deep.
The hole that's been blown in the labor market by this recession is profound.
And more than 38% of all unemployed workers have been out of a job now for at least 6 months.
Pull your chairs up a little bit.
In Des Moines, Iowa, Suzanne Hull has started a support group for her fellow unemployed. Laid off from a genetics firm in February, she found another job 5 months later, only to get laid off again.
I've been in transition, I would call it, since February, and the emotional roller coaster that I've been through is unlike anything I've ever experienced.
The 10% unemployment rate only tells part of the story. When you factor in people who've given up looking for work or been forced to take part-time jobs, the so-called underemployment rate is now more than 17%.
We're nearing the situation where 1 in 5 U.S. workers is either unemployed or underemployed.
That's nearly 27 million people, roughly equal to the combined population of America's 10 biggest cities.
It's now a matter of I have to take what comes along.
Mary Worley was laid off in April from her job as a design technician with Caterpillar. To pay the bills, she's relying on unemployment.
I took a part-time job in retail.
She's working the sandwich counter at a Walmart outside Peoria.
I don't have a lot of time. Unemployment doesn't run forever.
The unemployment rate is not likely to fall much until we begin to get significant job growth. That's not expected to happen before the spring or the summer of next year. Katie?
But at least a glimmer of hope tonight.
A strong glimmer of hope, Katie.
All right.
It's very encouraging.
Anthony Mason, thank you so much. So how to get businesses hiring again? The White House says President Obama will unveil a new jobs plan next Tuesday. Today, he traveled to a one-time industrial powerhouse that has been struggling for decades. Here's Chief White House correspondent Chip Reed.
At a town hall in Allentown, Pennsylvania, the president called the new unemployment figures a welcome sign of better days ahead.
But I do want to keep this in perspective. We've still got a long way to go.
A very long way to go, according to many who live in Allentown, where the unemployment rate is 12.5%, and in the surrounding region where it's just under 10% and rising.
Nobody's helping the people get back to work.
Joe Mihalchik lost his manufacturing job in July and now ekes by on Social Security. He voted for Mr. Obama, but says the president's focus is on the wrong priority.
And there's been so much infighting about health care and delays that there's been nothing personally that I see really being done about jobs.
The president says that's a misperception.
No, we've been working on jobs the whole time.
So to convince people he's on the job, on Tuesday, the president will lay out a new plan to create jobs. White House sources say it's likely to include billions for state and local governments to avoid laying off workers like teachers and police, cash incentives for energy-efficient weatherization of homes, tax breaks for small businesses that hire workers, and money for roads and bridges. The White House refuses to call the new plan a second stimulus, but in fact it looks a lot like a smaller version of the first stimulus. How to pay for it? The White House says probably with money returned to the government by bailed-out banks. Republicans call that irresponsible, a new taxpayer-funded slush fund, they say, for useless government programs.
It should be used to lower the federal budget deficit and the national debt.
The White House won't say how much a second stimulus might cost, but on Capitol Hill, Democrats say it should be in the range of about $70 billion. Katie?
Chip Reed reporting from the White House tonight. Now turning to Afghanistan. Today, the U.S. launched a major offensive in the south, Operation Cobra's Anger. 1,000 Marines swooped into a Taliban hotbed, the Nowzad Valley in Helmand Province. General David Petraeus, the head of Central Command, said this offensive will pave the way for the surge of 30,000 additional troops that President Obama ordered this week. Of course, for every soldier in every war, the sweetest place on earth is home. And one group of veterans is home tonight for the first time in more than a year. Here's Michelle Miller.
Man, you guys look great!
After 13 hard-fought months in Afghanistan, 53 combat soldiers hit the tarmac at Fort Campbell, Kentucky early this morning. For many, this is their third or fourth homecoming. But for Cindy Bala and her 6 children,
some days are rough. I try to cry in the shower.
The end of her husband's first deployment feels sweet.
Hey. How y'all doing?
With every homecoming, somewhere on post, there are other troops preparing for deployment. Here at Fort Campbell, the next wave of soldiers heads out in January. As many as 5,000 have already received their orders to head to Afghanistan. Another 9,500 this spring could be in the first round of President Obama's new Afghan strategy.
There's a lot of hope in the president's comments. As we go in with a mindset of let's get this closed out. Let's get to an end state.
Back home, Staff Sergeant James Bala is ready for a little rest and relaxation and spending the holidays with his family.
Spend time with our family, enjoy the time that we do have back home, and be prepared to go back.
Is it tough to know you have to go back?
I volunteered for the job. It's part of my job. I'm ready to go again.
Tested and seasoned, members of the 101st Airborne have served longer than any other soldiers in Afghanistan and Iraq, and they know that they're not done yet. Michelle Miller, CBS News, Fort Campbell, Kentucky.
More Americans are in fact going off to war tonight, including one unit devastated by the shooting rampage at Fort Hood, Texas last month. More than 40 reservists from Wisconsin left for Afghanistan today. They work as counselors helping military personnel deal with stress. 3 from that unit were among the 13 murdered, allegedly by an Army psychiatrist. And next on the CBS Evening News, an inside look at a doctor whose practice has polarized the nation. Few issues divide Americans more than abortion. It's a conflict that's erupted in deadly violence. Last spring, Dr. George Tiller, one of the few doctors who provided late-term abortions, was murdered in Kansas. Tiller's clinic is now closed, but his cause has been taken up by a former colleague. Tonight, national correspondent Jim Axelrod has an inside look at his controversial practice outside Omaha.
Not every doctor takes a different route to work each day.
Anything that's habit forming is deadly.
Nor has a metal detector and bulletproof glass at his office.
People out there that want to kill us.
But not every doctor is Leroy Carhart, a 68-year-old former Air Force surgeon who performs up to 3,500 abortions a year.
A child should never be separated.
While activists protest at his clinic.
Have mercy on us. Until I can find someone else to care for women, they still need somebody to care for them.
That Leroy Carhart believes in his work and doesn't hide what goes on inside this building here in Nebraska is pretty plain to see. You also might find it a bit surprising, given what happened to his close friend and colleague earlier this year. When George Tiller was shot in his church last May, he was America's best-known provider of late-term abortions, those ending pregnancies after 22 weeks, a point when the fetus might survive outside the womb. For more than a decade, Carhart spent a week each month assisting at Tiller's clinic.
When he approached me to come work with him, he said, you know, both of us are very vulnerable targets, and I feel the need to have somebody else to carry on what I'm doing.
After Tiller's death, Carhart started doing late-term abortions at his own clinic, on average, 1 every 10 days. Carhart says about half the abortions he performs between the 22nd and 28th week are due to fetal health issues, half the mother's mental health. After the 28th week, it's 90% fetal health.
Yes, they did.
Women like Sue, an unmarried 28-year-old mother of 3, come from around the country. Sue's somewhere between 21 and 23 weeks pregnant. She's aborting because she put her last baby up for adoption and had a nervous breakdown. She's waited so long this time, she says, because she didn't have the money.
At this point, this is the easier decision for me. And that may sound selfish to people, but I'm having a lot of complications that aren't good for my health.
Which I think is probably a rational choice on her part.
A rational choice?
Yes. I mean, she went through it. She already knows the amount of trauma that she went through with the last child.
So you wouldn't have any problem performing an abortion on her?
No. Certainly not at 21 weeks.
Is Dr. Carhart going to hell?
I don't know. It doesn't look good.
While not all of his strongest critics condone violence, Carhart is nothing short of evil to them. It's the law of the land that he's allowed to do what he's doing.
It was the law of land in Germany to corral Jews and gas them. It was the law of the land to make black people slaves.
No choice!
The lines are clearly drawn, and Leroy Carhart stopped trying to change his critics' minds a long time ago.
I totally believe in this cause every bit as much as I did believe every morning when I got up in the military that I was doing the right thing. And if dying for this cause is what I have to do, then that's what I will do.
In fact, the only thing that will change for now is the route Dr. Carhart takes to work. Jim Axelrod, CBS News, Bellevue, Nebraska.
This is crunch time for the toy companies. Of the 3 billion toys sold each year in this country, nearly half are brought during the holiday season. But are they safe? Sandra Hughes reports on the push to get the lead out of toys made in China and the USA.
Good girl. When she was 1, Britt Nordquist tested positive for high levels of lead. Her exposure came from a recalled Thomas the Train toy, which she had repeatedly put into her mouth. Her mother was worried that her speech was delayed.
She does not have, the number of words that she should have at this age. She should have about 6 to 8 words, and she really doesn't.
2 years later, Britt's lead levels are down and her speech is normal.
Mama, I got this for trick-or-treating.
But her mother's fears about lead toys still persist.
I'm going to do what I can as a consumer and as a mother to make sure that these kind of products are not in my home.
Making her job a little easier, the Consumer Product Safety Improvement Act, which just this year lowered lead levels in products made for children under 12 and forced toy makers to do independent lead testing or face stiff penalties.
The 2007 big toy recall was really a wake-up call for the entire industry.
In 2007, more than 26 million toys were recalled for lead and other dangers, sending parents into a panic. In 2008, there were a whopping 85 lead recalls, and this year only 15. Toy importer Charlie Wu tests his toys twice before they reach American shores, but he says some Chinese manufacturers still want to cut corners.
A lot of them ask me, like, when are we going back to the old way of doing business?
And what do you...
Never. It's gone. Okay, it's a new day.
In years past, just getting toys to the U.S. almost guaranteed shelf space. Not anymore. The Consumer Product Safety Commission has now stationed inspectors full-time at 10 major U.S. ports to check for lead in toys. Advocates at the Center for Environmental Health are responsible for much of the progress. The small organization started doing random toy testing and suing toy makers to expose dangerous lead levels in 2007.
We had many motivations to do this work. One was to protect the kids who play with the toys. Another was to protect the workers who were manufacturing the toys.
Gotcha! DJ Nordquist isn't convinced yet.
If it's made in China, I just won't buy it.
But with 80% of all toys now imported from there, avoiding made in China is almost impossible. Sandra Hughes, CBS News, Los Angeles.
And up next, the Buffett you may not know, but you should. Finally tonight, December is a time for giving. For some, it just goes with the territory. Richard Schlesinger spent time with someone who has the holiday spirit all year and the American spirit as well.
Pretty much everyone in Fredericksburg, Virginia knows Doris Buffett.
Now we're going to go right here.
She's 81 and has the kind of reputation money can buy. She's given away a fortune.
How much have you given away so far?
Well, I think we're on record. It's something over 80 million. Here's the family.
$80 million. She'd rather not say how much more she has to give. It's money she inherited from her mother, whose investments were managed by Doris's kid brother, Warren Buffett, the billionaire owner of Berkshire Hathaway.
And he has a little knack for that. So I've had some good luck there.
And at one point, she was making money faster than she could give it away.
We'd give away money during the month, and then the bank statement would come, and I had more money than I'd started out the month with. So it seemed like we were on a treadmill there for a while.
This is a problem a lot of people would sort of like to have.
Well, I just look at it differently. I have a different goal.
She donates to education programs for adults, for children, even for prisoners.
This is huge in here.
It is. It's big, and it's new, and it's up to date with every possible thing.
$2 million went to build this top-of-the-line shelter for the mentally ill in Fredericksburg.
They get medical help here and psychological. They're a good group, I know that.
And the kids of Fredericksburg got a little help from Doris when she found out the city was going to charge a fee to get into the swimming pool.
So what'd you do?
I wrote a check for $62,000 and presented it to them, and that took care of that.
She's written a similar check every year since the pool opened.
This is the world headquarters?
Yes, this is it.
She runs her foundation from her bedroom, surrounded by family photos.
And this is the sort of famous photograph of my brother holding a money changer on Christmas Day.
Her goal is to donate the money she has left in the time she has left. As Doris Buffett says, I'd love that last check to bounce. Do you want to go to the great beyond broke, or?
I don't think it makes much difference once you hit the skids. And some people think I'm doing it for brownie points, you know, to get into heaven.
She swears she's doing it for more down-to-earth reasons, because she can, and because it never occurred to her not to. Richard Schlesinger, CBS News, Fredericksburg, Virginia.
And thank you, Doris. And if you know someone who's an example of the American spirit, go to cbsnews.com and please let us know. That's the CBS Evening News for this week. I'm Katie Couric. Thanks for watching. Good night.